Thank you. Thank you very much. This afternoon's event, as all of you know, has been organized by India Narrative. So most of you know what India Narrative stands for. Nevertheless, I would like to say a few lines about India Narrative. It's a digital multimedia platform that has emerged as alternative voice for India, positive narrative not only for India but abroad. It was started by a small group of like-minded persons in March 2020. The journey so far has been very encouraging and it has emerged as an independent, non-commercial, apolitical and opinion-based analytical platform in the social media. Currently, it is published in English, Hindi, Urdu and Arabic with presence across all major social media platforms like YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Insta and what have you. So, India narrative is very, very grateful for the support and encouragement that it receives from not only you people, but from a lot of other people who visit these sites and also occasionally give their own inputs for topics that are being discussed. This afternoon session, we have two gentlemen here, Mr. MJ Akbar on the right and Syed Badrul Ahsan on my left. Now, to this audience, introducing these two people would be like carrying gold to Newcastle. You are all very aware of what they have done in the past, what they are capable of doing, what they have been continuing to do, and what they shall be continuing to do in future also. So we shall, without further ado, jump into the kind of discussion that we wanted to have today, which is going to be a kind of enlightening session because all of us present here know certain things about both countries, about Bangladesh. We know about certain progress that has been made by both countries. But nevertheless, there are some standpoints which perhaps would add value to the knowledge that people like us already have. And it is with this purpose that we have taken the liberty of putting you on this dais over here and maybe start off with a few questions and then make it a kind of free-flowing discussion. And afterwards, we would also try to take some comments and questions from the floor if you both gentlemen agree. Yeah? তাহলে এই কটা বাক্য বলার পর আমরা একটা মোটামুটি question answer session in চলে যাই. Let me ask both of you first. During the partition of India, Punjab and Bengal, the then Congress President Maulana Abul Kalam Azad had opposed it. He did predict that Pakistan would be a failed state and that the partition was not correct at all. There was no similarity in culture, language, and food habits between East and West Pakistan. Of course, his stand was vindicated in 1971 when Bangladesh became a necessity. I want to ask both of you your own opinions in terms. Who was primarily responsible, according to you, for creating the partition of Bengal and forcing the east part of Bengal to merge with West Pakistan and form East Pakistan? So would you like to give your views on that? Okay, you would like MJ to start? Okay, please.
Thank you. Welcome. Yes, before I begin on the hugely important discussion of the origins of Bangladesh, may I seek your indulgence of just two sentences on the origins of Bangladesh, which are intended. Well, I'm grateful to everybody you wrote it to being here. I am particularly thankful that it cannot convey how much it means to you. That you underline it. I mean, you have no idea how from Delhi Park, he was then one of the editors of the science. How much effort, how much affection, how much mental, how much energy, yet it exactly makes me emotional. And with this, the facts.
I would just like to emphasize that his very presence in any gathering is the kind of motivation for anybody who is there. You see, when I saw him, I also see, okay, Sriram is here. This is so fine. So if there are any doubts in the discussion that we're going to have, we can always fall back on his expertise.
To go back to your question about, to go back to your question about who's responsible for Pakistan. You know, we could have a whole discussion on that one question for the next 32 hours and still find differences of opinion. Why don't we shift?
No, we will not have a 32-hour discussion on that, but we will have possibly a kind of a 4-minute opinion of yours, which may be debated, which people may agree with and not agree with, but we will not go into the nitty-gritty of that now. But if you would like to make a short 3-4 minute statement on that.
Having written actually at least 6 books on the subject, I find it quite encapsulate everything in 4 minutes. The short answer is Jinnah. The long answer is many things. And what Maulana said at that time, it was not a Congress president, he was a 45. What he said at the time, Jawaharlal Nehru was the president during Congress. What he said at the time was that religion cannot be the basis of nations. And that, in fact, brings me straight to 30 years later, 1971. And it is very, very important to understand the context of Indo-Bangla relations that 1971 was a war of liberation, but it was not only a war of liberation. It was also a war of ideology. It was also a war between the forces of racist, faith-based dictatorship and the forces of secular democracy. And it's an extremely important fundamental principle of our country. The India and Bangladesh actually reversed not only the partition, but it reversed the logic of partition. And that is really historical terms. I think set back to the forces of dictatorship in 1971, but the elements who represented dictatorship and so on and so forth, they were not easily defeated in 71. They revived. And therefore, this full history of the 50 years is not simply a history that belongs to Bangabandhu, Sheikh Mujib. He defeated the first period. But the lady who restored democracy to Bangladesh, which is Sheikh Hasina, she is an equalizer in the history of Bangladesh. And if that is Bangabandhu, then maybe we should call her Bangabir. For having brought back, today we are talking about a state before another election. Now elections have become natural. They were not for long periods of this phase. So I think it's extremely important to recognize that the relationship between the two countries, let's be real, there is no situation in which the relationship is going to be perfect. Right? There will be always problems which arise. There will be factors which come in. Sometimes the demands of separate nationalism will also face problems, will create potholes on the bridge. But friendship means that you resolve whatever differences arise through influence, through dialogue, through conflict. Look what has been achieved. A border problem which was thought to be, almost frozen,
Right.
has been sorted out. Today, no one will believe it if you look at it before it happened, that electricity is being supplied from our country to Bangladesh.
Right.
I I know I don't want to take too much of the time, but I do also want to stress one fact in opening remarks, is that we too have also redefined the meaning of neighbor. And I don't mean this only in, shall we say, political, by romanticizing the politics of the situation. No. Our normal concept of a neighbor is defined by geography. That is no longer true. The concept of neighbor should be defined by reach. Look it through to your personal life. If you cannot reach your neighbor, then that is not really a neighbor. Let me forget Bangladesh for a second. Today, I think from India to Gulf, we must have how many hundreds of flights a week? I don't know. Hundreds of flights. To a neighboring country, to our west, we can't fill one flight. One flight a month. So who is your neighbor? Today, Bangladesh, you can reach, there must be 10 flights a day. 40 hours. Right?
Quite a lot.
And you know, people have done this going. One of the most important visual experiences of what this means is when you go there, you find a civilized order. You find people crossing in 20 minutes, putting their luggage, going through immigration, and as it is, it's just another, it's a neighbor. Right? It's just another traveling. There is no frozen or semi-frozen hostility. It's an air of amity. Go to the other border, go to Atari, and you have entered another century. There is the only thing that you can hear is the silence of what has been lost. And this is all very, very important realities of what can happen, and never forget that the same country to our west was very smart. Why did it change? It changed because Bangladesh had the courage to accept that culture, language was the basis of nationalism. This did not make them less quote unquote Islamic. Let's get rid of that. They're as strong Muslims as anywhere else in the world. In fact, I do believe that the more secular you are, the more genuinely Islamic. The very clear verses in the Quran which says your religion for you, my religion for me, which is what the basis of a secular democracy is. Right? In fact, the antithesis of this is anti-Islam. So these, I think, are the fundamental principles around which this relationship is built, will remain, and I'm sure will continue.
Thank you very much for those opening remarks. After your initial reluctance, I think you have made it very, very clear. Yes, I insisted that part of my job to insist on it. So, Badrul sir, what are your views?
My thanks to India Narrative for giving me the opportunity, though I would like to state at the outset that in the presence of MJ Akbar and Shonto Dr. Dada, it's very intimidating. But then I'll try to course through the intimidation and try to give you my opinion.
I'm sure Shanandada's attending this program was not intended to intimidate either of you. Right?
The process of the feeling of intimidation comes. I met Shanandada quite a few years ago in London, and I've been reading his complete judgment. I've been reading them since my university, my college days. So, which is why the intimidation factor comes in here. But going back to your question, yes. Who's responsible for partition? I keep telling people in Bangladesh, whenever people ask me what has been the tragedy tragedy in life of the Bengali. Bengali is on the eastern side of what used to be United Bengal, which is today, which then became East Bengal and then East Pakistan and finally today's Bangladesh. I keep telling them that I hope you can hear me. It's not disturbing.
Yes, there is a little bit of an echo which needs to be adjusted, but otherwise you can be heard.
Can you hear me now? Yeah. So I tell them that the biggest tragedy for all of us in East Pakistan from 1947 to 1971. The tragedy for us was the partition of India in 1947. Now, of course, there were other factors. There are so many factors involved in the vivisection of the country. And I will say the subcontinent, I refer to it as the country, the home country, because I still believe, even at this point of time, 51 years after the liberation of Bangladesh, that India, Pakistan, and what is today, India, Bangladesh, and what is today Pakistan, is still the same homeland, despite the political divisions. So, as far as the responsibility for the division is concerned, I think a whole lot of factors were involved. The 1940 resolution for Pakistan, Lahore resolution, that was a blunder, blunder in the sense that it had severe ramifications for us in Bangladesh, for example. I might refer to an incident in the year 1995. We had this media conference in Lahore, arranged by the South Asian Media Association, SAMA, which was headed by Pakistan's Syed Akbar. And at one point, the Bangladesh team, we went to the Pakistan Memorial in Lahore, and one of my colleagues, I was the youngest in the group at that time, and he asked me to states, the state lekha. So then I read the first paragraph is written there at the bottom of the memorial in English, Bengali, and Urdu, and the word state was there. It is state limited. Original states. So in the original resolution, the word was states. It was surreptitiously turned into state by Muhammad Ali Jinnah and his group. So of course, the All India Muslim League, they tried to convince us, Muslims of the subcontinent, that we were a separate nation. We were not, okay? Because people were saying we had different religions. There were Muslims, there were Sikhs, there were Hindus, there were Christians, and a whole lot of other people, even people who didn't believe in any religion. But the nationality, the nationalism was the same. So that was the first point where we lost our way. We lost our way because many of our own leaders in the eastern part of Bengal, they they actually collaborated with the Muslim League. We all remember here in this room, I'm sure those of us who remember, people my age, people senior to us, and people who were born after 1971, people who have studied history. We refer to the Calcutta, August 1946, great Calcutta killings. We remember the role played by the Muslim League leaders, including the then Prime Minister of United Bengal, Mr. Hussain Sohrabhi. And unfortunately, in my country, let's be very frank about it, we observe Mr. Sohrabhi's death anniversary every 5th December. And he is eulogized as a great proponent of democracy in Bangladesh, and not in Pakistan as such. And the Ittifaq newspaper regularly refers to him as Ganatantra Manush Putra, so the voice of representative democracy. But we don't refer to his role in 1946. So the responsibility was also there. I mean, there's no point at that point of time for the government, for the Prime Minister of United Bengal, who was a Muslim League leader, to declare a holiday on the 16th of August, after which the riots commenced. And of course, later on, when the other question is, when Lord Mountbatten came in, he turned partition into a rushed process. He came in March 1947, and then by August of that year, the country was divided. 2 million people were dead. 14 million people on both sides of the border were in the Punjab. In Bengal, the killings had already taken place in August 1946. But in Punjab, the movement of people there from India from Pakistan to India, that was horrifying. So that was, again, the blunder that was committed to the legal partition. Lord Mountbatten, we actually don't, maybe he wanted to be lionized in history because he is noted, he's remembered as a person who was very proud of his role in decolonizing India. That was there. Then again, there are other factors involved. The cabinet mission proposal that was accepted by both the Congress and the Muslim League at that point of time. Once the Muslim League had accepted the proposals, Mr. Jinnah came under pressure from his fellow Muslim Leaguers as to why he had accepted it. He was looking for a way out. He was trying to wriggle out of the whole thing, even after accepting the cabinet mission proposal. proposals. So then, on July 10, 1946, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, at a press conference, he made he sort of complicated matters a little by telling newsmen that the Congress had agreed to nothing. That in other words, in effect, the Congress was free to interpret the cabinet division proposals in its own way. So all these factors led to the partition of Bengal particularly. And towards the end of at a time when partition became inevitable, there was talk of a united Bengal. Personally, I would say that was an idea, that was an afterthought which didn't have much of a chance because Mr. Sohrabji was involved, Mr. Sharat Chandra was involved. Let's say even if United Bengal had come to pass, would it have been a United Bengal under the terms of the Lahore Resolution, or would it be a secular state? Because it couldn't be a secular state because the Muslim League was involved, Mr. Sohrabji was involved, they were all in favor of Pakistan. So if a United Bengal had come into place, what would the structure of the state be like? Would it be secular? Or would it be an Islamic republic? Would it be Muslim-dominated Bengal? Because Bengal had a very large, it had a majority of Muslims, of course, but then it had a very strong presence of the Hindu community also. So where will these people go? And even today, I hear people in Bangladesh, outside Bangladesh, grieving over the fact that Kolkata didn't go to Pakistan. So I keep telling them if Kolkata didn't go to Pakistan because of these religious factors. So all these factors are there. And before we go on, I'd like to point out one comment here. This is courtesy of the late Mr. Kuldeep Nair. He writes that when he met Tahira Mazhar Ali Khan, the widow of Mr. Mazhar Ali Khan, she gave him some information which had not been revealed to anyone earlier. And what was the information? A few weeks after partition, Mr. Jinnah was persuaded to fly, to take a low flight over the border areas to see for himself the consequences of partition. And he saw, from his Dakota aircraft, he saw all these thousands of people streaming into Pakistan, thousands of people streaming out of Pakistan. And then he whispered, he said to no one in particular, in fact, it was almost a whisper, what have I done? And Mr. Mazhar Ali Khan, he reported this statement to his wife, made her promise not to reveal it to anyone until his death. She didn't. So when she met Kuldeep Nair, she gave this information. So if that was Mr. Jinnah's realization, that is also understandable. And finally, on August 11, 1947, a few days before Pakistan, Mr. Jinnah, as we all remember, he said that in this country, everyone is free to practice his own religion. You go to your mosque, you go to your temples, you go to your church, and Pakistan would be a secular democratic republic. If he had said this thing earlier, why did he make this statement when Pakistan had become inevitable, when much blood had flowed under the hot water, blood had flowed under the bridge? So the responsibility lies in a whole number of factors and personalities, and in the process, we in Bangladesh paid the price for 24 years till 1970.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. Very clearly put. Of course, you did mention Lord Mountbatten. MJ Sahab, I come back to you. Is it true that Lord Mountbatten also till the last moment did not know which way it was going, and he had a plan A and a plan B as far as the speech was concerned after independence? Yeah.
Post-factual mythology. He came after this post-factual mythology. He was sent after talks held in the first week of December in London. These talks were attended by Jinnah, Mountbatten, and Jawaharlal Nehru. The Congress leadership, Sardar Patel was also invited. He didn't go. Gandhiji had no idea what was happening. He was not informed. He was in government. And the agreement on the future of India was determined after these talks. I put it in my book. Gandhi's in this and the struggle against Jihad Islam. And from the transfer of power, all my references are actually not from an Indian source, not from a Pakistani source, not from a Bangladeshi source. They are from transfer. So the British can't accuse us of fiddling with them. These are their arguments. And there, it was obviously Jinnah himself was extremely happy. From the top, the rest was a question of persuading the other key players on the London plan to Scotland. And Wavell was not supposed to go by February. Wavell was asked to leave on that consent for many reasons. But the most important fact that he had up till May 1948. Why did he do it? Speculation is that everybody knew what Jinnah said. He was suffering from tuberculosis at a very late stage. Nobody knew when he was dying. At the King's reception in December for this conference, he could not stand. He was given special permission to sit. And everybody is, this is not, he was calling all the time. It is not a secret. But that's that long story, whittled it down at least at one of the early cabinet meetings. His ministers, and this is again from the records, his ministers in Pakistan said, "Sir, isn't this a happy day?" Some occasion. We have won Pakistan. And Mr. Jinnah turned around, looked at it and said, "You've won Pakistan. Pakistan was created between me and my dad." And there are another fact, if you know, in reinforce what you said.
This was way after the few weeks that was spoken about when he flew over.
That was again Mazhar Ali Khan's story is slightly apocryphal, but the record is that his secretaries have left behind. He said this after visiting Canada. So in any case, the substance is the same. This place or that. But one fact before we hope we conclude on Jinnah is that he had two homes in India. One was a big bungalow in Delhi, which is now I think the Dutch embassy's residence on Aurangzeb Road. And he sold that for 3 lakhs because he was shifting already. 3 lakhs was a huge amount. But his Bombay home, he never sold, although he was offered 10 lakhs. And the understanding was that he didn't have total clarity on what he was doing. He thought he would actually come and visit. Because also you must remember that India was not a single unit. It was the British Raj plus how many hundreds quasi-independent states. And nobody had ever conceived of passing for a visa. Travel and trade. I think there was a fair amount of. But to get back to the future, which I think is really the most important thing that I see about the difference between how Bangladesh is emerging and which horizon is Bangladesh going towards and which horizon Pakistan. People of Pakistan are not happy. They're as good as anyone else. In fact, we go to Pakistan, you can get warm hospitality. Everything.
Uniformly, we hear that from whoever has been there and any delegation.
It's the idea which has brought this. Right? And this is the importance of the constitutional idea, which is so important. And if you want to know the difference, I'll sum it up in this way. That from the French Revolution times, and of course coming from John Lennon on the gate, liberty, fraternity, liberty, equality, fraternity. There is a fourth element now which must be added. Liberty, equality, fraternity, and modernity. What is modernity? It's an easy word to use, slightly more difficult to define. Modernity is democracy. Modernity is gender emancipation. Modernity is is religious freedom, it's freedom of religion, right? And modernity is perhaps most important, the elimination of poverty. And on all these factors, Bangladesh is moving towards modernity, just as we are moving towards modernity and anti-capitalism. I'm afraid I can't say that about the situation in Pakistan.
Right. Thank you very much. Before moving on again to Badrul sir, may I request you to kindly either put your phones on silent mode or switch them off altogether. Yes, MJ Shah has just said that after Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, a lot of credit has to be given to Sheikh Hasina for the situation in which she has brought Bangladesh today. So, how do you think Bangladesh has been able to tackle radicalism and manage to keep such a secular ethos and values intact?
Thank you again. Well, those of us who have studied Bangladesh's post-1971 history realize how much of a tragedy has gone into play in our country. First, I said earlier, partition was a tragedy, and in terms of Bangladesh, the assassination of Bangladeshi Mujibur Rahman was a tragedy, followed by another tragedy, the killing of national leaders, the leaders who formed the provisional government and operated from Bangladesh. They were killed in the supposed security of prison in early November 1975. And after that, again, of course, I don't have to let you know what happened, but then let me recount briefly. For 21 years, the situation, the emergence of Bangladesh was a revolt against Pakistan in every sense of the word, not just against the Pakistan army. So we were battling the Pakistan army with, of course, Indian assistance, and we defeated the Pakistan army. But the greater idea behind the emergence of Bangladesh was the creation of a state that would be secular, democratic, socialist, and nationalistic. By nationalistic, I mean I refer to Bengali nationalism, that kind of a state. But then, in course of time, in our country, through the assassinations of Bangladesh's family on the 15th of August, we found ourselves in a stage where we are replicating the Pakistani process of military takeover of the state. First, on the 15th of August, it was a bunch of retired or serving majors and lieutenant colonels who carried out the coup. Then, on the 3rd of November, there was a counter coup. 7th of November, there was another coup. And all this process went on till for the next 21 years. So, from 15th August 1975 up to 12th June 1996, when the Awami League led by Sheikh Hasina came back to power, we lived through this period of darkness, the denial of history, our historical factors, the historical factors that went into the creation of Bangladesh, they were pushed under the rug, and it was almost like, if you recall, the Soviet Union or China, when leaders were removed or liquidated or went out of focus, they were airbrushed out of the picture, out of history. So in those 21 years, our media, print media and the electronic media, they mentioned, for example, the Liberation War, our victory day on 16 December, Independence Day on 26 December. Everything was mentioned properly. The people rose in revolt against Pakistan and liberated the country. But the leadership was never mentioned. Sheikh Mujibur Rahman's name, Mujibnagar government's name was never mentioned. But yeah, to make a long story short, the emergence or the return of the Awami League to power on 12 June 1996, that made a difference for many of us, especially for the younger generation, people who had grown up, who were born and had grown up to adulthood in those 21 years. And for the first time, they realized that Bangladesh, the ethos of Bangladesh, was different in 1971 from what they had been taught in those 21 years. So, yes, Sheikh Hasina's role in the formation of the government in 1996, and then later on, of course, she went out of power in October 2001, but then came back in 2008. her role is significant in the sense that she's been trying to restore the old ethos that we believe in and do believe in. And of course, she has had her problems. Despite those problems, the economy has been making steady progress. GDP has risen. It's more than 7% now, despite the Ukraine war and all the ramifications, consequences. Then the foreign policy. If you look at the foreign policy, when the BJP came to power in 2014, the general feeling in Bangladesh was that relations between the Bangladesh government and the Indian government, or relations between the ruling Awami League and the ruling BJP here, would take a downturn. It did practically improve vastly, but they're still on an upward path of development. So relations with India have gone very well, despite those little problems which nations always have. Then Bangladesh's relations, foreign policy perspective on Russia, and with reference to China, they're also quite appreciable. And we in Bangladesh have never tried to play off one state against another. Well, first of all, we can't do that because we are a small state and we have our own perspective. Then, economically, Bangladesh's relations with India have been on an upward swing. Though, as far as trade is concerned, annually, India exports $14 billion in terms of goods to Bangladesh, and ours is much below that. So that we would like that to improve. But beyond all that, Sheikh Hasina's contribution to consolidating democracy, consolidating the Bangladesh state as it was constituted in 1971, is remarkable in the sense that she has had to battle against Islamist militancy, which she has done very well so far. I wouldn't say that militancy has been controlled, has been curbed, but then the way these different drives against militancy have gone on, they have been remarkable. And she has also tried to reintroduce the idea of Bengali nationalism. See, our nationalism, our emergence in Bangladesh was based on the idea of Bengali nationalism. But in the 21 years in which we lived through darkness, we call it an age of darkness in Bangladesh, the idea of a so-called Bangladeshi nationalism was introduced. Now, we do not believe in Bangladeshi nationalism because that is, in a very subtle, indirect way, a throwback to the so-called two-nation theory of the Muslim League. Because when General Zia took charge, he was not yet president. In late 1975, by dictatorial fiat, he removed secularism from the constitution. He removed socialism from the constitution. In place of secularism, he introduced firm belief in Allah. And instead of socialism, social welfare, social development. So in other words, they throw the constitution. Then we have the second military ruler, again, for General Syed Badrul Ahsan. He put a skull cap on the state and decreed that the state of Bangladesh would have a religion. See, people have religion, individuals have religions, but the state of Bangladesh now has a state religion. That state religion is still there. Though people will complain, they will ask you, Sheikh Hasina having such a strong command over the country, why doesn't she remove it? I think she's been moving in a very subtle. She's been solving all the one problem after another. The trial of the killers of Bangladeshi, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, then the trial of the old collaborators of the local collaborators of the Pakistan Army. So many years after they aided the Pakistan Army in the genocide, after they became ministers, you cannot imagine. See, we can't imagine in Nazi Germany the old Nazis coming back to power. In Japan, the old militarists coming to power in Japan. But in Bangladesh, these people, these dictatorial regimes, they made it possible. They will tell you that we opened up the country to full parliamentary democracy. That was not the case. They opened up the country to a political infiltration by the old collaborators of the Pakistan Army. They became ministers. Matur Rahman Nizami and all these people, even 2 days, I remember, even 2 days before liberation, December 14, they said that if Bangladesh comes into being, it will be regarded as the illegitimate child of India. And these people, they served as ministers of Bangladesh. So she's tried them, a good number of them have been executed per judgment of the tribunals. And of course, she's trying to tackle militancy, but she also realizes her limitations. She has done all these things so far, but with the next election coming up, it is our perception that she will go for the election first, and she will win the election. She will lead the party to another. Because despite one's political views, which party you support or which party you don't support, it is vital that the process of development, the process of the restoration of secularism, be maintained. I think the government is doing that. Following the election, all these other matters will be taken care of. And as a citizen of Bangladesh, I'm confident that this will be done. But yes, one last point. Sheikh Hasina has been in Bangladeshi history. She's the longest serving head of government, and she's the strongest head of government. So in terms of history, her father was there for 3.5 years before he escaped. But she is the kind of progress that she's maintained, and the kind of foreign policy she has gone for, the way her government has been tackling the influx of the Rohingya refugees, that is commendable, although it's a strain on our economy.
So in other words, the processes that she has started to take the country to these greater heights, I think will only get strengthened if she comes back with a mandate again in the coming elections, so that the processes can go on.
Yes, the process needs to go on because we wouldn't want to go back to those 21 dark years. And besides that, there's also the fact that if in future any government comes to office, any government replaces the Awami League, they will not be able to reverse the process that has been made. Even parties which don't agree with the Awami League. But right now, what we need in Bangladesh, the Awami League is there. It needs to restore secularism to the fullest extent, and we also need the other secular political parties, for example, CPP, the Communist Party of Bangladesh, the Workers' Party of Bangladesh. They should be able to raise their profile a lot better than they have so far. That will help the process.
All right. Coming back to you, you talk about neighbors and you talk about the importance of reaching out to neighbors, because you may be neighbors and yet be totally alien to each other without reaching out to each other. Now, when we compare Bangladesh again, not only we have been always comparing Bangladesh to Pakistan, but let's say another neighbor, Afghanistan, right? So when we talk about liberty of women, emancipation of women, women's rights, education, including education and women's empowerment, there is a huge contrast. And do you think that Bangladesh, the present scenario, steps are being taken to not go and follow that line, but move away from it and empower women in some way? Do you?
Oh, yes. I think that was one of the first points I made when I was defining modernity. And Afghanistan, actually, since you mentioned it, I think it's a shocking betrayal. Shocking betrayal. Once I remember discussion was coming up, first let me put the context, then we get to the text. What we are seeing today, please let us not forget that for 2 decades, for 20 years, from 2001 to 2021, under Hamid Karzai and Ali, Bangladesh experienced an age in which the prisons were open. I mean, the prisons which had captured and put women in a cage, they were open. The protests that you are seeing now are by women who were born in 2001 or perhaps 5 years earlier, and have enjoyed. There were television centers where they were working. By means they were working in public spaces, in public faces, media, government, of course, and so on. It was really a very, very important social revolution that was taking place after the disaster of Taliban. It is so unfortunate that the Taliban, which was taken and driven and led to power in 1996-97, was actually created by a lady called Benazir Bhutto, who herself was a beneficiary of liberalism. But for her own interest, thought it extremely expedient to imprison all the women of Afghanistan. Right? And she actually said the Taliban are my children. So this, and I, it's very, and I'm sure I'm not speaking on behalf of everyone, that the way in which the West abandoned the Afghans as a people will remain one of the most important, what should I say, tragedies when history is finally written, objective. And imagine this could have happened once. I remember somewhere this was under discussion a few years ago, and money was there. And I said, this is a very simple question. All of us want peace, but we have to decide whether Afghanistan is going to enjoy the peace of Afghanistan or suffer the peace of Oblivion. And this is where they have sent Afghanistan back to the graveyard. But I do not believe that, Syed pointed out, you cannot reverse the advances made in terms of liberalism. And those who try to do it will discover something very, very deeply embedded in Dhaka, which is that the Bengali psyche will never run. Right? You can go a little bit here and a little bit there, but the DNA of the Bengali psyche believes in harmony. It doesn't mean that it has always had harmony. There have been troubles. Human beings, where there are human beings, there will be certain to her as human. But deep inside, I am always reminded that the ancestry of the Bengal family, iconic family of Bengal family, which gave us not only the symbol of Bharat Mata, but also gave us the national anthems of Kolkata, right? All Rabindranath's image of Bharat Mata. So I mean, you can see what is contribution to our thinking and saying this family is made. But the Joram, Thakur Tagore, you call him, he used to be known as a Pir Ali Brahmin. Why? Because of his relationship with the Bengali Muslims. And it was a compliment, which is given to him. Some people always, of course, cannot see a compliment without being sarcastic. That's the part. This is the ethos of Bengal. And this ethos is reflected in the search for harmony. In such poetry, after all, even for those who are not, proficient enough in Bengali to understand it, will still understand that it is a search of the soul for humanism. It is the search of the soul through the lived experience of emotion, the both the love that we have as human beings and divine power. Right? So this is the point of humanism. That is why he is the poet of the nation. And they had lived very interesting may have become a Brahmin. He still had to Kolkata in his house, and at the tracks ceremony he was defeating Brahmin.
Yes.
So it was, they accepted every element of faith as part of a complexity, which is what religion is. And indeed, if I had anything to do, which I will not, to do with offering a way out of secularism and the constitutional Islamic inheritance, You should simply write in the constitution that freedom of religion, as expressed in this verse of the Quran Sharif, will be part of the constitution, fundamental principles of Bangladesh. Who can argue with that?
Exactly. Nobody can argue with that, but do you see that happening?
Our concept of secularism, as Akbar Sahib will agree with me, most of you will agree with me, but if we, that's a very good point he made. But even then, we realize the presence of so many other communities in the country, so we need to go back to secularism proper, inclusive of all followers of different faiths in the country. There's also our indigenous people in different areas of the country. So secularism, progress actually means a path to secularism or through secularism. And when we talk of development, Bangladesh development, or the development of any other country for that matter, in these modern days, liberalism, liberal politics, unless you count people like Donald Trump or Jair Bolsonaro. Otherwise, we have progress. We can have democracy, but democracy, in democracy, you have the question, you have the idea of secularism inherent in it. So without, we talk about democracy, but then we don't practice secularism. We practice some other point of viewpoint, some other strand of politics. That doesn't help. And we in Bangladesh are going that way. As I said earlier, it's a difficult path for us, but then we are slowly and gradually going towards the full restoration of secularism, liberal politics in the country.
Yes, it is. Of course, we all wish that comes successful because it is the intention of all normal human beings to have such a secular society. And you have already mentioned that Sheikh Hasina has to a large extent been successful in keeping these radical forces at bay. Do you think this is perhaps just a dormant phase that, these ugly heads may rear their heads later on in the near future? Or do you see any possibility of that?
Well, they're always there. They always try to rear their heads in future. But I think the situation has come to a point where their heads will always be down. They can't do much of it. So, but for that, we need complete government policies. We need strong government. By strong government, I don't mean authoritarian government. A strong government believing in democracy and secularism, secular principles, which Sheikh Hasina has so far provided to the country. In much the same way that Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, her father, tried to do in the years after 1971. He said all these problems, besides other economic problems and all that. But I think she'll be able, she and her government should be able to counter all these threats and take Bangladesh to greater heights in development. For example, Akbar Sahib spoke about women's empowerment. So that has been happening at a rapidity which is unimaginable for
because he talks about the collective Bengali psyche in that matter, that it is not going to reverse the process. Do you also believe in such a Bengali psyche, irrespective of religious faith, that is a common psyche?
There's a common Bengali psyche here. In fact, a few years ago, I came to Calcutta. At the airport, I was trying to be a little humorous. And I told the immigration officer at Netaji Airport, আপনিও বাঙালি, আমিও বাঙালি। কোনো সন্দেহ নেই। আমি বাংলাদেশ থেকে আসি, আমাকে ভিসা নিয়ে আসতে হবে। And he was being equally humorous. He said, 47 সালের ছোট্ট একটা ঘটনা ঘটেছিল। পার্টিশন So, but Bengali, recently there was I attended a conference in Calcutta. It was arranged by an organization called Bangla Worldwide. And one of the discussions was in Bengali, Khondito Desh, Akhondito Jati Sarkar. So Khondito Desh, একটা স্বাধীন দেশ, one independent republic, the other is part of another independent republic. but the race, the nation, the aspiration, the poetry, the song, the literature, they remain the same. So, and which is when the remembrance of partition makes you feel even more sad.
আপনার এই এয়ারপোর্টের ঘটনার মতো আমারও একটা অ্যানেকডোট আছে ছোট। সে লিভিং ইন কলকাতা সিন্স মাই বার্থ, মাঝে মাঝে যখন টেলিফোন অ্যাটেন্ড করি তখন হয়তো কারোর সঙ্গে কথা বলি, বলি যে বাংলায় কথা বলি, 10 মিনিট কথা হয়ে গেল, তখন ভদ্রলোক আমায় জিজ্ঞেস করলেন যে may I know your good name, as because he's always asking, you know. So I say, yeah, good, bad, all things are, I'm Rama. And the person immediately say, Rahman, Lagna H name, R-A-M-A-N, Rahman. Often immediately the person switches over to English and say, oh, you're from the South. And I give a dramatic pause and say, yes, I'm from South Kolkata. So that as an aside, but then recently the World Bank has applauded Bangladesh as a global champion in its economic pursuits. This has mainly happened in the last decade, right? Do you think there are any particular measures taken in the last decade which has led to this kind of recognition?
The World Bank's recognition comes about 10 years after anything.
And you still can't say better later than never.
This is a process which has been happening through some time. And, you see, one of the things that we must never forget, that the economy of a nation, at least in my sort of belief, actually an economy is not created by bankers, and even less so by economists. An economy is created by education. And other Bengal, Hindi. So this is the only state which worships Saraswati with the intensity that it does. You know, keep saying that on another level, that you will never be able to win Bengal unless you win the Master Moshe.
True.
And it's not just the Master Moshe in school and college and all that, it's Master Moshe right there.
This unconditional respect for the
It's
master.
unconditional respect for the products. The products. Every mother in Bengal will give her life for the child. And it is the same there. It is the same there. Now, what is education? Education is not the accumulation of arithmetic. Education is the accumulation of understanding. You put it in the classic way. God has given everyone akal. Akal is basically wisdom.
God has tried to do it.
God has gently succeeded.
He has not been partial in that.
What we have forgotten to give is skill, education. And if we add the two, then you will get a natural society-driven urge towards greater economic equity and thereby social economy. And I think this process was first understood in its entirety, that this churn was happening. That's understood in entirety and then turned into a bulwark government policy by Sheikhs. And this is what, now there were other players, some other actors, I don't want to mention names, but some of them were, actually a bit exploitative also, although they were credit for things they didn't fully deserve. However, in a large matrix, these things will. The thing is that one thing also that Bangladesh, it never denied employment. And that was a very important part of the socioeconomic phenomenon which has taken Bangladesh. So Bangladesh is a question of government listening, understanding the people's desires and becoming an echo response in that sense. And that is one of the reasons why Sheikh Hasina gets votes. Nobody gets votes by accident.
No, not by accident.
So
Other means of getting votes.
nobody, I tell you, in Bengal we have seen many governments. Always a good reason. I think.
And finally, you see, bottom line is that the people do understand what they want. True. I just want to go back to a remark of yours when you said Afghanistan has been a shocking betrayal. Yeah? And you mentioned the total betrayal of the West. In the case of Bangladesh, yeah, and in the case of Bangladesh, do you think that the kind of progress that they have made, let's aside the neighbor India now for a few moments, do you think that it has also the support of the West that you mentioned?
It should. I don't know if it has to be or not. It certainly should have. All you have to do is look at the alternative. And it's not very encouraging. So, but you know, governments sometimes get lost in the tactical rather than the spirit. And it creates sometimes discordant notes.
Yeah, or some fractures, yeah. Sure.
So it's not, I can see, not a very even response to that. Must recognize. And it's not easy to create democracy. How many countries between Japan and Europe have habeas corpus? Just answer the question and you know how rare it is.
Yeah. True. That takes me back also to post 1971. In 1972, former US Secretary of State Henry Kissinger had said Bangladesh is a basket case. Now, from that statement onwards, to the state of the economy in 2022, Bangladesh has made such a lot of progress. Would you like to highlight 2 or 3 important reasons for achieving this kind of maturity?
Thank you again. I'd like to make one point here. The remark attributed to Kissinger was actually made by his Undersecretary of State, U. Alexis Johnson. And he said that Bangladesh would be an international basket case right after, while Bangladesh was about to be born. And Kissinger's statement was, no, but not necessarily our basket case. So we have this wrong perception that Kissinger said it. No, he borrowed the phrase from U. Alexis Johnson, his deputy. And yes, the progress. First of all, in the early phases of Bangladesh's independence, the first instance of progress that we can cite here under Bangladeshi Sheikh Mujibur government was the drafting and adoption of a constitution within the first year of Bangladesh's independent status. So compared to Pakistan, which had its first constitution in 1956, 9 years after gaining independence, which constitution was again abrogated by the military when it when it seized power in October 1958. So that was an achievement for us. And then we had the first general election on March 7, 1973. And then, of course, we all realized the ups and downs that took place in Bangladesh after 1972 or till August 1975. Now, then again, leaving aside the 21 years when progress of the kind that we speak of was not there in evidence, not very much at all. The progress that we have made so far in the time since 2009, that has been, I wouldn't say phenomenal, but I would say it's been remarkable. We have just completed the Padma Bridge, or as you would say, Padma Bridge, over the mighty Padma River, and that was also with our own national resources. And speaking of going back to the World Bank had in the beginning had criticized the government of Bangladesh, had accused the government of had accused government employees, government officials of being involved in corruption even before the bridge, the work on the bridge got underway. Later on, they went into investigation. They found no corruption on that sort. But then they tried to come back to the country, to the government, and restore the aid. The government decided not to accept it, so which was an achievement on our part. Then again, we have with Indian help, we have other mega projects coming up, and we're constructing a tunnel under the Karnataka River called the Bangladeshi Tunnel. That is there. This one instance of progress. Secondly, the consolidation of the state. This in the last many years, since 2009, despite all these problems, Islamist militancy and the attempts to disrupt the state of politics by parties and personalities opposed to, I won't say opposed to Bangladesh, but opposed to the principles of the war, Bengali nationalism. The state has continued to function in a very strong. We have a strong state. One might take issue with the question of whether it is a fully democratic state or a fully liberal state. That's beside the point. But the state is strong, the leadership is strong, and our question for the future is what happens beyond the state. In the early 1960s, if I remember, there was a question after Nehru coup. Now, we have this question after Sheikh Hasina, because she has been in power for a very long time, and she herself keeps insisting that she's come to the end of her tenure, the baton should be passed on to other people. So, to that extent, I would say that the progress that the country has made, consolidation of institutions, these things are important. But then again, talking institutions, we also need to ensure that there should be the degree of politicization that has come into certain institutions. They need to be rolled back in the sense that in the way that progress has been made in other areas. Going back to women's empowerment, we have the Prime Minister, talking of women in politics, the Prime Minister, the Leader of the Opposition, the former Prime Minister, the Speaker of Parliament, the Minister of Education. They're all women there. In the civil service, we have bureaucrats, secretaries to the government. They are serving and they have served as ministries, as the secretaries of important government ministries. They are the armed forces. We have major generals in the army who are women. We have women in the police force. They go to the Congo, to Africa, on even peacekeeping missions. We have vice chancellors who are women. So it's a change picture where development in this area, women's empowerment is concerned. And in the rural areas, of course, the infrastructure, roads and highways, they are being built, or the old ones are being reconstructed. So that gives us hope. Sometimes we despair. Like any other people in any other country, we are rather impatient. দ্রুত গতিতে করলে ভালো হয়, কাজ হচ্ছে এবং আমরা যেটা আমাদের অনেক আশা আকাঙ্ক্ষা থাকে, বাঙালি আবার আমরা একটু বেশি ইমোশনাল হয়ে যাই, তাড়াতাড়ি পেতে খুব দ্রুত পেতে চাই।
এটা একটা কাউন্টারের সামনে কিউ যখন দিই তখন আমরা বলি দাদা হাত চালান সাথে।
হ্যাঁ, আমি দেখি যে আমরা যখন বিদেশের কোনো এয়ারপোর্টে বিমানবন্দরে কিউতে দাঁড়াতে হয়, ঠিক সোজা দাঁড়িয়ে আছি, আর যেই ঢাকা বিমানবন্দর আমরা কোনো কেউ একটা ক্রাউড নেই, দেখতে ভালো লাগে। আমার নিজেরই বাঙালি, সে আমাকে ধমক দিচ্ছে, আমি তাকে ধমক দিচ্ছি, ভালো লাগছে।
Right. Okay, we have been discussing on a lot of issues and have been talking for quite some time. We will of course come to a few questions from the audience over here. But before that, before winding up here from this podium, I have a 3-in-1 kind of rapid question for both of you to react to. One is on the connectivity issue, mainly with focus on the Matarbari port and the river connectivity of Brahmaputra River. How do you see India-Bangladesh relationship growing in the future? And China-Pakistan nexus currently has been working overtime to take Bangladesh in its fold. How do you see it and what is needed to be done by both Bangladesh and India? And what is the possible fallout and impact of the Ukraine war on India and Bangladesh? So these are three in one kind of rapid questions. If you would like to, in any order, respond to that.
I think the Ukraine war will not have any impact on India-Bangladesh relations. There too, of course. We have such a splendid example of the meaning of connectivity. It's not simply a word. And where is that example? The world's longest river cruise, holiday cruise, has just been planned. I think it's going to cross 27 rivers.
Yes.
And then end up in our north.
So that's how it's being projected.
And again, if you look at back 10 years, who would have thought that such a thing would be possible? Today, the train services everywhere. Today, buses are moving. Today, well, let's put it very simply, we are behaving like normal human beings. And this is what the life across borders should be like, without either side surrendering its sovereignty or its rights. I mean, we can be friends without being in the same family. So, the third question was connectivity is also extremely important,
right?
Because the whole region, Kolkata right up to Arunachal, will eventually connect. Without connectivity, the economy's ability to grow gets stuck. And I think that the dividend will come in the next years. Just as one part of the dividend is the cruise, you will see many. It's a huge market.
The other thing I was mentioning was the China Park Nexus.
I think China Park Nexus has become a nexus between a godfather and a weakling. Instead of the two strengthening each other, actually one is draining. It's not as...
So it will meet a natural death.
I don't know if death is the right word, but it certainly is not going to live up to whatever promise was in the of Beijing. In any case, I am very delighted to suggest to Assad saying that Bangladesh will take its decisions out of its own use, not out of its perception of the Chinese or Pakistani. And remember one conversation with an Iranian some years ago, and he put it very well. He says, Iran and India have many problems. He says, but when India disagrees with us, we know it is because you believe it is in your national interest. But when Pakistan disagrees with us, we know that Americans have problems.
So it will be dictated.
The Chinese.
Dictated by what?
So this is the Bangladesh, whatever decision you take, it will take, it will take it because the government in Bangladesh believes that this is the right thing to do by its country.
All right. Would you like to supplement, complement, contradict anything that MJ Akbar said?
About the China-Pakistan nexus, begin with a small anecdote, it's a quote actually. It goes like this: every country needs an army. The Pakistan army needs a country. So they have always that system. Now, with regard to Pakistan, our relations have not developed at all. The relations between Islamabad and Dhaka have not developed at all because of the successive Pakistani government's inability to come forth with an apology. A good number of Pakistani rulers, heads of government, have been there, from Zulfikar Ali Bhutto to Ziaul Haq, Benazir Bhutto, to Pervez Musharraf. They've expressed regrets, but they've never apologized in any concrete manners. Imran Khan, a lot is being made about Imran Khan's condemning the Pakistan Army actions in 1971. You see, he condemned the Pakistan Army actions before going to power. He's condemning them after falling from power. When he was in power, he never said anything of that. So that is this China. Talking of China, we have successfully, I think, the government has successfully staved off Chinese pressure in the sense that we don't have a Hamdan Tota and we don't have a Gwadar. So that is that again shows that as Akbar Sahib said, Bangladesh has its own perceptions, has its own policies to decide on. So that is there. And about connectivity, I think over the past many years, relations or links between Bangladesh and India have developed to an extent which is beneficial for the whole region. I would say that other countries in the region, in South Asia, including Pakistan, if at all is possible for them, they can come and be part of the process. Not like CPEC or not like PRI, but in the interest of the region itself. So we have, going back to, just mentioned it, going back to Pakistan's need to apologize, but they've not never apologized, and some of my friends in Bangladesh think they will never apologize. One of our diplomats in Pakistan, who's still visiting Pakistan, is now he's posted in a country in Europe. I was talking to him a few weeks ago about the need for me to write another article asking Pakistan to apologize. And he said, Badrul bhai, Pakistan ko khama chahiye na. I said, "Kya chahiye na?" And he said, I'll send you some pictures on Facebook Messenger, on email, sorry. He did that. Apparently, before leaving Pakistan, he went to the Pakistan Army Museum in Rawalpindi. And he saw these two posters, and he took snapshots of those posters, and he sent them to me. On one poster, at the top, it says clearly, in English, in 1971, the Mukti Bahini committed genocide, the Pakistan Army did not commit genocide. So that was one disinformation. The second poster said, in 1971, the first terrorist force in South Asia was established by the Indian government. It was called the Mukti Bahini. So if they can have these posters on display in the Army Museum in Rawalpindi, we don't expect them to apologize at any time in the future. So then we have this Chinese, with China, Bangladesh has a very proper diplomatic relations insofar as circumstances allow. And Pakistan, of course, we are nowhere yet until they come forward. And with India, yes, connectivity has happened. So, did I miss one other question?
No, one was about the connectivity with the Brahmaputra River connectivity.
Yes.
You mentioned about the river with, and the other one was the China-Pak nexus, and of course the Ukraine war.
Oh, yes, the Ukraine. The Ukraine war has affected us in terms of rising prices of commodities. But here too, the connectivity with India has helped because in recent days, these materials for our Rupur nuclear power plant, they could not go directly to Bangladesh because of Western sanctions on Russia. But the Indian government allowed the ship to come to West Bengal Haldia port. And from there, these materials for the Rupur nuclear power plant are being transported to Bangladesh. That's an excellent example of state-to-state cooperation. And what we need to do in future is to encourage or develop more of people-to-people cooperation in terms of people visiting India and Indians visiting Bangladesh, Bangladeshis visiting India. That will be redound to the benefit of both our peoples.
Right. আপনি ঠিকই বললেন যে ক্ষমা চাওয়াটা বোধহয় পাকিস্তানের শিক্ষা ব্যবস্থার মধ্যেই নেই একেবারে ডিকশনারিতে নেই ক্ষমা চাওয়া।
ইতিহাস স্কুলে যে ইতিহাস পড়ানো হয় সেখানে বলা হয় যে East Pakistan broke away from the rest of Pakistan because of Indian conspiracy in league with a bunch of Bengali politicians.
And as far as Imran Khan is concerned, he was always adept at bowling an in swinger and the very next ball bowling an out swinger. He was always adept at that. Now, after this, we have come to the absolute end of the discussion, but one question remains for MJ Sahab. You have raised a lot of measures, a lot of steps taken by Bangladesh to reach this state right now. Do you think there is anything or something that India can learn from Bangladesh as far as social model, women empowerment, or anything is concerned?
This India will learn from its own cumulative philosophy and experience. Bangladesh will learn from its own philosophy and experience. The two are independent sovereign nations. They will deal with each other on the basis of their understanding of what brings us together. It's a good way of going back to where we started.
Yes.
Is that it is now in place a commitment to certain principles that become a natural reason for many forms of cooperation. There is an end to the suspicion, even more than hostility. Suspicion is the biggest cancer in international relations. We just check, and that fog of suspicion has, I believe, lifted. I hope that this is, if we are meeting 10 years later, we still are able to do the same. And I really do believe that we will be able to.
All right. Thank you very much. On that note, we sort of throw the discussion open to those who are being listening. Yeah. Yeah, that's it. Yes, please. Is there a microphone that can be passed on to him? A cordless microphone? You can take one of these if you want. Yeah, go ahead.
Honorable Minister, Mr. Syed Badrul Ahsan of Bangladesh, and former Minister of External Affairs, Mr. MJ Akbar. Good evening to you all. I have two questions. Before that, I would like to convey one thing, that cricket game, when Bangladesh wins against India, people in general feel happy. There is a remark you will find, they played well, we should play better. So there is no problem for Bangladesh general people to accept Bangladesh cricket. Like that SDI report you see, they are far better than our country. And we are proud of it. Bangladesh is doing well. And Syed Hasina, Prime Minister, like Mr. Akbar told just now, that we'll plan our thing on our way of building it. We cannot borrow it from others. But Sheikh Hasina's leadership has conveyed something in the world, that any person, any government does anything wrong, he can be tried even after 50 years. The way she brought the international court in Dhaka, duly approved by the International Court of Justice, and taking those elements who created so many inhuman activities during 71 and sorting them out one by one. My two questions. Like we are having a very good relation, like Bangladesh and India, got 4,097 kilometers, and that border is touching 5 states of our country. Now the smuggling activity is on, but we must know this smuggling activity has to be stopped. We have to take proper risk by both the countries, since both the countries, one minister, you are present, and another is former external minister state. So there are 5 items they get smuggled. cow, rice, sugar, and another is that syrup and sugar.
Flexible.
Flexible. So out of this 5 point, why can't we regular accept that syrup to make it a legal trading? The local trade, like the cow, once they is the age of egg. They are killed here by license slaughter. Why can't we make it that?
The question is very clear. Why can't you make it illegal?
Legal. So there is no public action.
और आपका द्वितीय प्रश्न?
This smuggling activities is being used as a logistic service for the militaries. So that much check has to be done. Because if you see the border, the BSL Act takes about 40% border with Bangladesh. They can't do the petroleum. The houses are congested. There are so many places, there is no space. So cannot think over it.
अपना प्रश्न should be kind of recommendation.
Yes.
Recommendation to those who can take decisions on this, right? So would any of you like to react to that?
So let me make a correction. You referred to me as a minister. I've always had the ambition of being a minister. No government ever took me in as a minister. So yes, I was press minister, and that was minister under pressure. So I recall in 1973 as a student, I used to wait for Bangladeshi Bhavan. He used to go by every day. I used to meet him. On the final evening I met him, he asked me, "So you can keep your school? আপনাকে দেখতে আসি, দেখতে হবে না, দেখতে বাইরে লেখাপড়া করা." I was a college student at that time. And the subject told him, "Sir, আমি লেখাপড়া শেষ করে আপনার সরকারের মন্ত্রী হব." তো আজ সরকার গেল, অনেক সরকার গেল, আমাকে মন্ত্রী বানালো। I'm not a minister, I'm a journalist. But briefly answer, yes, your recommendations, I think.
Right. So coming to the point,
About smuggling, I think it needs concerted, concentrated, focused efforts on the part of both governments, because it's a huge border on 3 sides, and I think, and it's a very porous border. So, যতই আমরা চেষ্টা করি না বাংলাদেশ থেকে হোক, এখান থেকে হোক, আমরা শুনি বিএসএফ শুটি হয়, অনেকবার বিজেপি প্রতিবাদ করে, বিজেপি আবার মিটিং ফ্ল্যাগ মিটিং যেটা বলে করা হয়, তো এগুলো আরো বেশি একটু শক্তিশালী করতে হবে, আরো বেশি ঘনদান করতে হবে, যাতে করে we don't have this smuggling going in. And yes, your other recommendation, these things, this instead of smuggling, if except consider, if the other things are formalized as part of a trade deal, that will help both countries. That will formalize, legalize the whole structure. But as far as the border is concerned, it's very porous. We need to be more focused on it. Right now, in our country, the one part of our border which is giving us problem is the one that Kichitabam Hill Tracks bordering Myanmar. So there we have the problem. But we keep hoping for the future. Our relations are good between Delhi and Dhaka. If we can focus on this aspect of your question, that would be excellent. And yes, about militants. Now, militants, at this point, the question of militants moving through the border, that has gone down considerably because militancy is under good control, at least up to this point, and will be under even greater control. Thank you, sir.
all right, I think there's a gentleman in the back there.
Yeah, my question, it has been very enlightening question to friend Syed Badrul Ahsan. What is the present state of mind with the Bangladeshi youth, their attitude towards India? All those particularly born after 1971, whether they recognize India's role, whether they are happy with the curriculum of the history, and how will they see their future in collaborating with India in all these subjects. That's my question.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shantanuda is a deeply respected friend.
Yes.
About the state of mind of Bangladeshi young people now, it's very positive because they have over the last so many years since January 2009, they've seen the links that have developed between Bangladesh and India, and they've also seen a revival of history where we have been stressing the idea of India's role in Bangladesh's liberation and Bangladesh's cooperation with India during the liberation war and after the liberation war, that has had a positive effect on them. Besides, in India, we have every year we have large contingents of Bengali students coming to study in India, and there are also exchanges between scholars, young scholars of India and Bangladesh. And I would say, briefly speaking, the young people in Bangladesh, they have very positive ideas of India as far as its role in Bangladesh's liberation is concerned, as far as its role in promoting economic relations with Bangladesh are concerned. Thank you.
Okay, there are a few questions that have come in here also, yes, but we'll take these two questions from here and there are three. Okay, where's the microphone? Can it be brought forward?
Good evening.
You have it already, fine.
Good evening, Excellency. My interest, as it is saying, Indian narrative, individual narrative as an Indian, I would like to inform you that my parents, they left Bangladesh when they were very infant, and they got educated in India, but still they had the idea of very rich culture of Bangladesh. And my parents and my in-laws, relatives also, they took part in liberation of Bangladesh. So you can understand the interest we have in Bangladesh high culture.
Yes, absolutely. But then
My
the question.
question is very vital. Seeing the politics and scenario of Bangladesh, we find two statistics. One is reduction in the population of Hindus in Bangladesh. Another is aggression and a ugly look of radicalism in Bangladesh in terms of religion. What would be the secularism politically in Bangladesh and how long it will persist? Thank you.
A lot of questions packed into one. Yeah, but I presume this question is addressed to Badrul sir.
Yes.
Can the microphone be brought to there are also people here, this young lady here. Yeah.
Thank you for your observations. Yes, the young man's reference to his parents' generation.
Yeah.
His sentiments about his parents' generation resonates with all of us, because our parents also belong to the generation. And as far as secularism is concerned, as I said earlier, we are trying in Bangladesh. By we, I mean not just the government, but Bengali society as a whole, to go back to the ethos, the original idea of secularism, as was espoused in our struggle for liberation. Not just during the War of Liberation, but even before that, through the 6-point movement for regional autonomy, which was enunciated by Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman in 1966. But yes, the next step, your question related to the reduction, to the decline in the number of Hindus. Now that is very valid. That is understood that there has been a decline in the Hindu population because of certain reasons, of course. And many of these reasons were related to communal violence. That has been there, and we understand the deep hurt that has been playing there. So we realize that many of these people who have left Bangladesh may never return to Bangladesh because they've come to India, they've gone somewhere, but mostly they've come to India. But our policies, our programs, our efforts for the future are focused on the fact that nobody should be leaving Bangladesh in future because of their religious affiliation. And we can only ensure that once we restore the secular Republic of Bangladesh. We've tried over the last many years to do that. We have not yet been able to go to that level because we still have these impediments coming in the way. Islam as the state religion. These factors have to be removed, and militancy that has to be curbed completely. So once that happens, we can always go back to the future. But what has actually happened? The movement of people from the Hindu religion from the Hindu background, leaving Bangladesh, that is regrettable. I mean, there's no excuse for it.
Okay, sir, I think microphone partner touching. Yeah, it would be very useful if the questions are framed, if possible, within 20 seconds.
I have been very impressed in my various visits to Bangladesh. Although this was the first visit that I went to Bangladesh, and on I made many visits and I got a lot of business through India and Bangladesh. Number one, there was the shipping business, steamer shipping business from Calcutta River to Narayanganj. And it was so that Bengal River Service, the shipping company, which was the largest shipping company upon a time in eastern India, that time India and Bangladesh was one country. And we had our base in Narayanganj. And the name of the company was Bengal River Service. But somehow after the independence and all these things, they could not operate because there was a lot of problem we had to face of the security problem. And the both side corporate has some details. Anyway, that was sorted out later on. I was personally invited by the 3 Prime Ministers of Bangladesh to visit Bangladesh. I have been there.
Yes, sir. You have a question for any of them?
Yes. So there I had a discussion with many chambers of commerce in Bangladesh. And there also we brought out the difficulty that we are having to do the trading with the Bangladesh because there was so much little point was there, some obstacle was there. But it was done. It was done very well and we were doing a very good business. But now since the security problem of the riverine route from Bangladesh to Calcutta is very risky because neither the government of our government, neither the government of Bangladesh is willing to give us the proper security to guide the vessels and other things to Calcutta. So that is cutting down the business. A lot of business has been cut down. That is one of the main things that we wanted to develop the business between the 2 Bengal and between the 2 countries, particularly in Bengal region. And the question is this: since you have come from Bangladesh, I will request you to please see that once again the shipping line between the riverine route should continue. It is now totally stopped. Almost.
Okay, that's a good.
So this is one of the most important ones.
Yeah.
So this is the one, and we have wrote many letters to the Federation of Bangladesh and others. And as far the jetty is concerned, we have our own jetty in Kolkata.
Right, point very well taken. I think you will carry this message also to whoever is concerned. There are a lot of other questions, but then as the time is very short, the rest of the questions will be handled over team. The gentleman will be there, so we can handle these questions over team. Yeah, please go ahead.
My question is to Syed Badrul Ahsan and authorized from my answer. As we know, the Tista Water Accord between Bangladesh and India is going on for a long time because of the some political problems here. So my question personally to you, what do you think will be the solution to achieve that Tista Water Accord, and what is the take of the Bangladesh government, and what do you think of getting a solution to this Tista Water Accord?
That's a governmental policy. I don't think.
I would agree with
I think these kind of discussions can continue over tea because even Badrul Sahab cannot give you a very simple short answer to this because it's a policy matter and a lot of things are involved in it. Right?
I think it's a matter between Delhi and Bangalore.
I have a question for Mr. Akbar. Most questions are for Mr. Ahsan, but I have to start. You said that there was a betrayal in Afghanistan by the West. Now, if that has happened in Afghanistan, Bangladesh is an immediate neighbor on one side of it, still Pakistan. There could be, if God forbid, there is some kind of a as Mr. Azhar was saying, there was a big period, 75 to 96, was seen as a dark age. There is no guarantee that Bangladesh will again not be faced with that kind of thing. What is India thinking in that regard? That, saying China Park next is very easy, but there could be something much worse that would be a.
Yes, Srinivas, your question is clear.
Very clear. And must tell you that the world has changed. That 90s, dictatorship, army rules were accepted as, and the principle was let de facto become de jure. That has changed. Now, the ability of any coup leader to get recognition for his government is extremely difficult, and sanctions will be imposed, and so on and so forth. And as we can see, sanctions regimes can be very good. So, as I said, if some people have not changed, at least the world is changed.
Okay, the world has changed. I see so many hands, but then there is absolutely no
Sir,
time.
just one question.
My question to Mr. Badrul Ahsan, sir, what do you think as an analyst would be the major issues before the elections in Bangladesh, the grassroots issues?
You see, the president of the press club, I have to allow him to question.
Sorry.
Well, the major issues would be, first of all, to keep the economy moving in light of this, because of the Ukraine war. And the second point would be going very hard on corruption, because corruption is something which we do not deny is or has been happening. The government will have to crack down very hard on corruption if it means to win the next general election in a very credible manner. And secondly, along with corruption, there should be an emphasis on the rule of law in the country. And finally, I think the idea of a strong foreign policy, not only in terms of India, but in terms of Bangladesh's relations with other countries in the region, will also be a factor. And included in those factors will be, of course, Bangladesh's relations with the West, with the United States, for instance. With the United States, we haven't had very comfortable relations in the recent past, as you will realize, because our ministers have been very vocal against America's intervention in our politics in their attempts to, not in their attempts, in the calls for proper democratic elections. So, the final point is that the election that we look forward to should cover all these factors, and I think the economic momentum should be encouraged. That has been going on. On the question of the economy, on the development of the economy will depend, Sheikh Hasina, on the Omani government's success at the ballot box next year.
Participatory and free election?
Sorry?
Participatory and free election?
Yes, we need to have a participatory
free elections. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm afraid there is no more time for any more questions here. There are a whole lot of questions and I think also. Okay.
Actually, I wanted to ask you, no, this is not related to gender, but I want to ask you whether COVID has brought India and Bangladesh closer. Has it enhanced our mutual interdependence? And secondly, as a practicing historian, I would like to ask you, what is the Bangladesh government doing about these huge grand mansions that our zamindars had to abandon overnight in 1947 and the years after that? And thirdly, I was...
You're coming with the third and the fourth.
No, it's okay. Thank you. No,
Yeah,
because that's a mention of a question, but then maybe you can give a brief answer.
Yes, well, COVID has brought us closer. Yes, we got Indian help in terms of getting vaccines from India, and that was a huge help for all of us in Bangladesh. And of course, later on we got vaccines from other countries, but the Indian move was the initial move, and it did help, and it did bring us closer to India, reinforced our links further. And about mansions, yes, the mansions, many of them are are not in very good shape. But what lately has been attempted by the government is to go for these mansions and restore them as historical sites, as heritage buildings. So that will take time, but then I think in order to, we keep telling ourselves that we are promoting Bengali culture abroad. So in order to promote Bengali culture abroad, which is a composite culture that we share with India, with the rest of the subcontinent, these buildings have to be restored to their former glory. They should become heritage sites, and the government is working toward that. They need to work a bit more.
Okay. So the microphone has come to the gentleman.
Yeah, finally.
Finally, because you were the very first person to reach this hall. I know this. Yes, yes.
So punctuality is at least remarkable.
Yeah.
Question and observation about Akbar Sahib. So you said Western sanctions and stuff like that.
ঠিক আছে ওনার প্রশ্নটা ঠিক আছে
So this is not on, come on. It's some basic thing.
yeah go ahead
That's all. So you talked about, and both of you elaborated, but you talked about Western sanctions. Today, Western sanctions are directed against a legitimately elected government, regardless of the quality of elections, and I don't want to go into this. But Sheikh Hasina's government is legitimately elected, and it is this government which is faced sanctions and which has a demoralizing effect on the law enforcement machinery, on the counter-terrorism machinery, which is done very well by FBI's own understanding. And what does India do in this kind of situation? Because we are strategic partners with the US, but on Bangladesh, and I know this for a fact, before we have differed strongly with the Americans. I remember 2013-14 elections when Pankaj Sharat took it out on Dan Nozema. It was really a straightforward verbal battle between them. How do we deal with this now? Because here, like in Afghanistan, where the Americans torpedoed the South Revolution, stopped all modernization back the mullahs, here again, they are doing certain things which are actually going to boost the forces of Islamist radicalism, because if the counter-terrorism machinery is demoralized by these sanctions that has been imposed against the RAB officials, who is it going to help? And the Americans are going ahead with it, continuing the pressure.
so would you want to react to that?
Of course.
Yes, sir.
Well, everything that India does on such issues is put on public display. Second, you may have heard a certain statement Badrul Bhai made about certain supplies which came. Stuff we should accept.
All right. If you could kindly pass the microphone to the lady on your left, she has been raising her hand right from the beginning.
Yeah, my question is to Badrul Ahsan ji. So can you tell us what is the impact, if any, of the return of the Taliban to Afghanistan on Bangladeshi society?
The return of the Taliban has been a matter of grief for us in Bangladesh, because like every other civilized society anywhere in the world, we were shocked. And in fact, we were very critical of the irresponsibility demonstrated by the West through their hasty withdrawal from Afghanistan. That is there. We do not agree with the fact that the Taliban had to come to power. Then they gave up. We did not agree with the American withdrawal, but the Americans have withdrawn.
When you say we, you mean
By Bangladesh, by Bengali society in general. So, and the fact that the Taliban have been moving ahead with their programs, if you call their policies, and banning women from education, that has not gone down well in Dhaka, in Bangladesh. So we would like to think that there will be a change in Afghanistan. We don't know how, or a change in the sense that there might not be a regime change, but that the Taliban will come back to order, will go back to rule of law, which again is difficult given the circumstances. But then we are unhappy with the way the West has treated Afghanistan, and we are also unhappy with the fact that the West has been ignoring the realities in Afghanistan at present, the realities in Syria, in the Yemen now, and the fact that they're all focused on the Ukraine war. See, everybody in the West is focused on the Ukraine war, and they've forgotten every other tragedy anywhere in the world. That's the feeling of the people of Bangladesh.
All right, thank you. That's as good a closing line as any, and thank you very much, both of you, for this wonderful discussion. The very fact that the discussion has triggered off so many questions is an indicator of the success of the session. Because any such session which throws out so many questions is proof of the fact that a lot of thinking has gone not only on the part of the people who are sitting here at the podium as experts, but also on the part of the people who have been listening very, very attentively throughout. We have the last item on the agenda for this evening, which is a surprise element consisting of two parts. The first part of the surprise element is that MJ Akbar Saab will want the Bengali.
Which is publisher of the Bengali translation of my book, Gandhi's Inclusion, The Struggle Against Islam. They wanted to present a copy to.
So that is going to be formally
So we will do it, and maybe this will also be construed as the release of Bengali.
Right. So if we could go ahead and do that, please.
Yes.
And we have to. All right, Ashwin. Yeah. ওটা খুলে দেখে দেবেন সবাই। formal launch of the হ্যাঁ খুলে একটু ডিসপ্লে তো সুন্দরভাবে ফ্যাক্ট করে যেগুলো রাফলি ছিঁড়তে খুব খারাপ। Okay. And the other surprise element is I would like to introduce Mr. Khijir Hayat Khan. Where is he? Yes, Khijir, please come forward. Thank you. Khijir Hayat Khan is a young filmmaker, writer, actor from Bangladesh who has made his latest film, and it is scheduled to be released on the 20th of January 2023 at the Dhaka International Film Festival. So we are going to have a peek preview of a trailer, 7-8-minute trailer of his latest film, Ora Sharjah, right? So would you like to say one or two lines about films here? আমাদের তো দেখতে হবে, চ্যানেল শরীরটা তো দেখতে হবে। আমার এটা খুলে বেরোনো না।
ধন্যবাদ, esteemed speakers, distinguished guests, and ladies and gentlemen. আমার নাম খিজির হায়াত খান, আমি একজন filmmaker. It's a privilege and honor to stand in front of all of you and present my film. আমার সিনেমাটার নাম ওরা সাতজন। আপনারা জানেন কিনা জানি না, স্বাধীন বাংলাদেশের প্রথম চলচ্চিত্রটার নাম ছিল ওরা 11 জন। এবং আমার দুই মামা, আমার বাড়ি কুমিল্লায়, ত্রিপুরার ঠিক পাশে। আমার বাবা মা এখনো কুমিল্লাতে থাকেন। আমার দুই মামা যুদ্ধে গিয়েছিলেন। আমার ছোট মামার নাম সাইফুল ইসলাম সাফু, উনি 16.5 বছর বয়সে সর্বকনিষ্ঠ মুক্তিযোদ্ধা হিসেবে শাহাদাত বরণ করেন। আর আরেক মামার নাম রফিকুল ইসলাম, উনি সেই ব্যক্তি যিনি ভ্যানকুভার থেকে ইউনেস্কোকে চিঠিটা লিখেছিলেন যে 21শে ফেব্রুয়ারিকে ইন্টারন্যাশনাল মাদার ল্যাঙ্গুয়েজ ডে হিসেবে ঘোষণা করা হয়, এবং আলটিমেটলি সেটা হয়েছে। এখন 21st February is the International Mother Language Day. আমি একটা মুক্তিযোদ্ধা পরিবারে বড় হয়েছি। তো মুক্তিযুদ্ধটা আমার কাছে শুধু একটা যুদ্ধ না, এটা একটা ইন্সপিরেশন। আর আমার প্রথম সিনেমাটা মুক্তিযুদ্ধ নিয়ে ছিল 2007-এ। ঠিকভাবে প্রথম সিনেমায় মুক্তিযুদ্ধকে তুলে ধরতে পারিনি। আমার ইচ্ছা ছিল আরেকবার যদি সুযোগ হয় সেই চেষ্টাটা করব। সম্পূর্ণ নিজের অর্থায়ন এবং কিছু মানুষের সহযোগিতায় আমরা একটা যুদ্ধের ছবি নির্মাণ করেছি। আসলে সিনেমাটা মুক্তি যুদ্ধের যত না বেশি একটু লাইটটা ডিম করতে হবে। আপনারা যদি সবাই রেডি থাকেন তাহলে আমি ইয়েটা যাব। হ্যাঁ, এই টেবিলটাও সরাতে হবে।
অলরাইট, পিছনে যারা আছেন সকলের কাছে অনুরোধ, একটু প্লিজ এই ফিল্মের ট্রেলারটা দেখুন। আর পরে আমরা আরো গল্প করব, প্রশ্ন উত্তর হতেই থাকবে এবং তারপরে চায়ের ব্যবস্থা আছে।
আমরা কি ট্রেলারটা ছাড়তে পারি? হ্যাঁ, ট্রেলার প্লিজ।
ফুল গাছটা ছেড়ে দিয়ে গেছে। কাল ভোর আবার আগেই আমরা মৌমাছির চারটা ভাঙবো। খাঁটি মধু খেতে অবশ্যই আসবেন। গত কয়েক মাস ধরে শুধু দেখেই যাচ্ছি পাকিস্তানের এদেশের মানুষের উপর কি অত্যাচার করে। কেন কিছু করেননি? সবার হাত পাওয়া আমি সেদিন সিদ্ধান্ত নিয়েছি এদেশের মানুষকে মুক্ত করতে হলে আগে শত্রুদেরকে শেষ করতে হবে, মারতে হবে। हिंदुस्तान की लड़की अपनी जान पार खेलकर क्या कर रही है?
आपने तो अस्ट्रोला के तुले गई नहीं मुझे क्या विश्व नहीं था। मर्दा गई मनुष्य के बच्चों ने यार छुट्टी बहुत चुकी।
पूरा इलाका सर्च कर रहा हूँ, देखो क्या मिलता है। मुझे में बाबू कोई उतारा भविष्य से चलेंगे। मुझे काम हो जाना था। रास्ता ग्राउंड से मैंने सीखा। बाबा, बाबा,
আমাদের জীবনটা যদি অন্য সময় হইতো তাহলে তার একদিন দেখতে হইতো।
71 সালে আসলে আমাদের সবার আত্মত্যাগের জীবন আমি কোনো দিন শোধ করতে পারবো না।
অনেক সময় হইলে হয়তো দেশের সমস্ত করতে পারতাম না, সবই উপরালার ইচ্ছা।
আপনার কারো কোনো খবর করতে পারবেন না।
मुक्ति बाहिनी को तो हम देख लेंगे। तुम्हारा प्रतिशोध नामिए युद्ध मैदान छाड़ो ना, अब खेलने मजा आएगा। एक ডাক্তারকে হারিয়েছি, আরেক ডাক্তারকে যে করেই হোক ফিরিয়ে আনতে হবে। আমি আপনাকে যাবো।
But they cannot take the soil of our country.
আসলে ছবিটা যুদ্ধের জন্য বানানো, সো আমরা অ্যাঙ্গেলটাকে ওইভাবেই দেখানোর চেষ্টা করছি। ইটস ওয়ার ফিল্ম, ইটস ব্যাটল হিস্ট্রি। এখন আপনি যদি দেখতে চান আমি দুটো সিকোয়েন্স দেখাতে পারি। ওকে, জাস্ট একটু বলে নিই, ভেরি কি সিকোয়েন্স। এটা আমাদের মিড ক্লাইম্যাক্স, যেখানে আমাদের একজনকে পাকিস্তানিরা ধরে নিয়ে যায় এবং এটার এক্সচেঞ্জে আমি একটু বলে নিই, না তো আপনারা কানেক্ট করতে পারবেন। গল্পটা খুব মুক্তিযুদ্ধের ঠিক শেষের দিকে, অক্টোবরের ইন্ডিয়ান ডক্টর ফ্রন্ট লাইনে একটা ফিল্ড হসপিটাল চালাচ্ছে। এই মেয়েটার মা একজন বাংলাদেশি, বাবা একজন ইন্ডিয়ান। পাকিস্তানের একটা ইউনিট পাঠিয়েছে ওকে ক্যাপচার করে বার্গেনিং চিফ হিসেবে ইউজ করার জন্য, আর মুক্তি বাহিনীর একটা 7 জনের স্কোয়াড চায় ওকে রেস্কিউ করে নিয়ে আসার জন্য। The whole film is about that mission. It's a battlefield story. যে সিকোয়েন্সটা আপনারা দেখবেন সেখানে আমাদের একজনকে পাকিস্তানিরা ধরে নিয়ে গেছে, আর ওরা চাচ্ছে যে আমরা মেয়েটাকে দেই তাহলে ওরা ফেরত দেবে। So we had our plans, it's a battlefield, but everything goes haywire, এবং পরবর্তীতে মেয়েটার একটা ইন্টারভেনশন হয়। আমার কাছে মনে হচ্ছে আপনাদের জন্য এই দুটো সিকোয়েন্স will make sense. Okay, please.
সবাই রেডি?
স্যার।
শাফিক
ভাই
তোমার এক্সপোজিং সব রেডি?
সব জায়গা মতো সেট করে গেছে ভাই, সবগুলো উড়াই দিয়ে পড়েছে।
শাফিক মানে বলে দাও।
वो देखो तुम्हारा स्क्वाड तुम्हें लेने आ गया। हमको लड़की मिल गई तो तुमको आजाद कर देंगे।
অপর্ণা, বাদে ওই বটগাছটা কি করতে হবে মনে আছে তো?